Hello, my name is Lizette. I live in a 4-story brownstone in New York City. I have 6 roommates and we live together. It's not always easy. So there are definitely moments where it gets hard, but there are moments where it gets hard when you live alone as well. Sharing this space with this many people has actually enriched my life tremendously, but there are skills required to ensure that that peace and benefit is maintained. And so these are some of the things that I've learned. What I'm going to discuss is going to fall into 3 different categories. The first one is communication, the second one is cooperation, and the third one is cleanliness. So let's begin with communication. So the first step to good communication has absolutely nothing to do with talking to people. The first step to good communication is talking to yourself. And I don't mean sitting on the subway and having a conversation with yourself. I just mean having good inner dialogue and or knowing what your inner dialogue is. When I first moved here, I had a pretty critical inner voice. That voice was a filter that I unintentionally put upon my conversations with others. So when someone simply just wanted me to put something away, what I heard was, "You're a slob," instead of "Help me out," or "I just want to use this space." So this is important. Having an understanding of what your internal monologue sounds like is important because it will help you see through the gauze of your own, design so that you can actually hear other people. That brings me to my second point. Being a good communicator means being a good listener. So you can't be a good listener if you can't hear what other people are saying because you're too entrapped in your own thoughts. When you do get through your own thoughts and you're able to hear the message that someone else is delivering, you need to be receptive to it. And being receptive is not just a word or an idea, it's an action. If the thing that's being said is something that might sound a little bit critical to you, being receptive also looks like not being defensive. And that's easier said than done, and it depends on your situation. You will know your situation better than I do. But it's worth noting that if you have chosen wisely and the folks that you live with or that you're communicating with in whatever situation, whether it be a living one or otherwise, are good people, right? And hopefully we are surrounding ourselves with good people. Their intention is likely not to belittle or hurt you. It is likely just to have their needs heard. Part of having good relationships with other people is being able to overcome discussing difficult things. And you'll not be able to do that if every time someone brings something to your attention, you're defensive, or you don't have time for it, or you don't have space for it, or you're not hearing them, or whatever the case may be. You have to decide for yourself what receptivity looks like for you. For me, it's typically taking a pause, acknowledging that I understand where the other person is coming from, and with sincerity. You have to be able to really put yourself in their position. So if being able to do that means having space between the moment of, I was going to say impact, the moment where whatever it is that occurred happened, and then you discussing it, then let there be that space so that you can be a good listener. But you have to sincerely acknowledge where they're coming from and see things from their point of view, and then from there, offer your own perspective or apologize or adjust your behavior or whatever the case may be. The final item for good communication that I would provide or offer is to not identify with other people's feelings. So, it's just like a funny thing because I feel like some of these things that I'm saying, it's like, duh, of course not. But for me, these are things that I was doing, I didn't realize I was doing. There's a difference between an intellectual understanding of a subject and then like an inner knowing. So whatever it takes to really just bring these things in so that we're feeling them. That's the idea here. So not identifying with other people's feelings looks like maybe there was something you said. You were trying to get an idea across to someone, and the words that you chose didn't land correctly for them, and they took offense to it. If you care about this person, it's important to acknowledge their feelings and see where they're coming from. But you don't have to identify with yourself as being this bully who always says things that are insensitive and is just such a big jerk. It's not who you are. The things that happen aren't who you are. They are things that happen, and you can take them and learn from them and move forward. Everything in life, whether in relationships or otherwise, there are ups and there are downs. So acknowledge the feelings and move forward. So that's communication. The last thing I would say about good communication is ensuring that you are prepared with a conflict resolution strategy. This is not something that I think people necessarily consciously consider very often unless they're in some sort of an intentional community environment. It's tricky because conflict resolution looks different for everyone. Some people really hold on to things and they need to discuss them. I have a roommate, for example, who they have to talk it out. It's not done until it's been sufficiently spoken about between the two parties. And I have another friend who just kind of releases their anger, says how they feel in the moment, and then just kind of moves on. They forget about it. They don't dissect things, essentially. Anyway, those are just some examples about what conflict resolution looks like for different types of personalities. It's helpful to consider what conflict resolution looks like for you. What does it look like when a conflict is resolved? The second section of good skills to keep you getting along with your roommates and your family and your coworkers and people that you're sharing space with would be cooperation. Let me tell you something. If you live with other people, it's not about you anymore. It's not just about you. This requires balance. You need to be able to hold your own boundaries, provide for yourself, for your needs and wants, while also acknowledging that you're not the only person in the room. Sometimes maybe you come down to the kitchen and the person doesn't feel like chatting. There's no need to take it personally. You have to be able to read the room. They might just be not ready to talk. Another way that this might look is like demonstrating acknowledging respect for other people by noticing how the space is when you entered it and leaving it the same way before you leave the room, because you're not the only one who lives there. So cooperating has to do with understanding when you're living with other people that you're no longer being held to a private standard, but you're being held to a group standard. Other people exist, their needs are important. Sometimes you have to set aside your own in order to meet them. That's just what cohabitating with other human beings is. I can't have my homies over at whatever time. It's like, yeah, because it's not your place alone. It's not just your place. So yes, you're gonna have to find a way to compromise. Like, I don't want to hear it. And don't get me wrong, there are going to be times where one person is being unreasonable, but the fundamental recognition going into a situation where you have to cohabitate with other people, I have a responsibility now to others as well as myself. So that's cooperation. So the final note for getting along well with others that you live with is about cleanliness. The thing about cleanliness when you're having roommates is not everyone's idea of clean is the same. And not everyone's idea of what should be cleaned matches. People need to be on the same page about what clean looks like for them. So for me, clean is if the kitchen is clean and the bathroom is clean, we're good. Don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean that I want everything else to be a complete disastrous mess. But I can tolerate the pillows on the living room couch not being fluffed more than I can tolerate there being some mysterious liquid in the kitchen or bathroom. I don't like it. That's my boundary. That's where I draw the line, and I've communicated that a lot. Everyone kind of has their thing. I have another roommate who, we have a backyard. They spend a lot of time out there because their room is close to the yard area. So they are really passionate about making sure that things are pruned, and we have a peach tree that the peaches aren't rotting on the ground. So kind of everybody has their thing. So people need to know what their thing is, where their line is, and how they're each going to contribute. And the way that you choose to hold each other accountable is entirely up to you. There are plenty of apps and charts and things like that you can use, but it just kind of depends upon the individual household. So that's it. Those are my thoughts about how to get along with folks that you live with. I'm also curious what your peeves are with cleanliness. Are you a person who makes your bed every day? Do you use a dishwasher? Do you hand wash? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye. There are 3 microphones in this house, and all of them are dead.